years I was on council before we never started council meeting late. That is disrespectful to the people. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not doing Okay. They have gone under Woodward and those guys. They've gone as much as a half hour late. That's ridiculous. You don't do that to the citizens.
I have it. Okay.
That's okay. I came in here and apologized to him.
You must be thirsty. Yeah. Doubling up. Or you want a bathroom break in the middle?
Will it have that as the date?
Yeah, it's like
No, not tonight. I'm planning on going straight through, sir.
when you last. Yeah, it's pretty simple.
I want to bring up the portal. Look at our live streaming while we're doing council. Yeah, me too.
Tonight at all?
Let's see. Homepage.
Yeah, okay, that's what you have.
You want one?
No, I have one.
I'm going to try.
I was going to pull mine out.
The notes,
But
when there's other stuff like Evernote,
interrupt my evening.
Penultimate, there's,
I thought I had
Let's
this
see how
on my
ugly I am.
editing. I must have another document.
yeah, that's, it's all about getting that
You're younger and a lot better looking than I am.
I still don't want to see it. I hate being on
really
camera.
pen friendly. So you can have like pencil.
Are you guys recording?
Down like your like manuscript, and then it saves it as a.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular city council meeting. Please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this evening and just ask that you would be with us, guide our deliberations, and Lord, I pray that you'd help us to do the things that are in the best interest of our city. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Rivers Olson,
Good evening.
Barentine,
Here.
Gillette, Martinez,
Here.
Russell,
Here.
Yates,
present.
and Mayor Jefferson.
Here.
6 present and 1 absent. The 1 absent being Councilman Gillette.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes of previous session. I would entertain a motion at this point.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, changes? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes have been cast. Let the record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6, recognition of scheduled public comment. Our first speaker of the evening is Doug Cohn, Englewood resident, present to address council regarding historic preservation. Good evening, Mr. Cohn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. First, a quick reminder, this coming Saturday, 2 p.m. at the high school, the Veterans Celebration and remembering those who fell. The Historic Society got a call from a group called the Colorado Tree Coalition about a month ago. That's the guys who work with the Boy Scouts and lots of other groups to plant 1 million trees. They were asking if we knew anything about the number 3 most important oak tree in Colorado and the number 5 most important oak tree, both of which are in Englewood. And that opened up a really interesting piece of Englewood history I had no idea about. It's connected with the Union Street Bridge. The 2 oak trees are on Stanford and Tanforan, just west of Federal, just at the west side of the Union Street Bridge. Gold had been found in Fairplay. And we talked earlier about the gold rush in Colorado. We talked about Thomas Garrett and some of the other founders in Englewood, and ran into a brand new name. The fellows, there were two guys actually. There was Samuel Brown and Joseph Brown, not connected with the Brown Palace Hotel, but Samuel got the permission from the new territorial government to put up the first bridge south of downtown across the Platte River to be used by the Denver, Auraria, and South Park stagecoach line. It just happened to cross the Platte River at Union Avenue. And it was there from about 1860 till the Denver, South Park, and Pacific train went up the canyon in 1878. There's a lot of details here I won't get into, but he made a lot of money on his toll bridge. It cost 25 cents for a wagon and 10 cents for a horse. And if your cows had horns, it cost 5 cents, but people could walk across free. He took the money and bought most all the land from Lowell to Santa Fe, Bowles to Hamden, with the exception of the piece owned by Peter Magnus, who was the guy who did Petersburg, and McBroom, who had the McBroom cabin. Brown, also built a ditch, and the ditch was used to irrigate all these fields. They raised wheat and sugar beets, and they had 2 processing mills for grinding wheat. They raised milk cows and beef cows. The milk cows later were some of the first, the milk from them was processed at the Meadow Gold Dairy that opened in the 1890s. The big trees that I'm talking about were planted along the Brown irrigation ditch in approximately 1870. They're, if you take an aerial, like a Google map, and look down in that section, there's about 5 trees right in a row, right along with the old ditch. The whole point of my talk tonight, talking about the agricultural roots of Englewood, talking about a couple of guys who came here that were here way before the city, but they saw an opportunity, and they thought we had a pretty neat place to exploit that opportunity. And it's a story about the beginnings of Englewood, and guys who took a chance. In 1860, hardly anybody lived here. So they came out here, built the bridge, rebuilt it a bunch of times because of the floods, made a little money. And I'd encourage you to go over to Stanford, just west of Federal, and Tanforan, and look at the 2 big trees. One has about a 6.5-foot diameter, the other about a 7.5-foot diameter. Don't knock on the door. Just look into it from the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Any questions for him from council? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Moving on to our second speaker of the evening, which is Patricia Ross, Englewood resident, present to address council regarding public health issues with recreational marijuana. Ms. Ross, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Mayor?
Good.
Good. All right. I am Dr. Patricia Ross. I live at 3361 West Monmouth Avenue in Englewood. I am here to address the issue of allowing recreational marijuana to be sold in Englewood. The key issue of recreational marijuana sales seems to be the tax dollars that can be raised. So the obvious first question is how much tax is that? There's much talk about that $64 million raised in pot taxes in 2014, and the 2015 figures have doubled that, coming in at $125 million. But how much of that does a city get to keep? Well, it depends on how many retail shops, how well those retail shops do, and the city sales tax that's collected. Much of that allotted $64 million comes from a 15% excise tax. The bulk of that goes to school construction projects, and that's regulated by the state. Marijuana taxes include a 10% state tax. I don't know how much Englewood gets of that, but Englewood sales tax, I believe, is currently 3.5%. That's the figure that must be used when considering tax revenue, not the full figure of all the taxes collected. So again, how much is that? No one knows, because no one knows how much a single shop in Englewood would sell. However, there's potentially a much larger problem that has to be addressed by any council in this state seeking to add marijuana, recreational marijuana. According to a 2012 study done by the Urban Institute and Brookings Institute, which corroborated the findings of the Tax Policy Center of 2008, For every $1 gained from alcohol and tobacco tax, $10 is lost in legal, health, social, and regulatory costs. Marijuana has repeatedly shown itself to be no different than tobacco and alcohol. Now, we don't know the actual social costs of marijuana. We don't. But the Colorado Springs Gazette points out state government fails to ask the hard questions about marijuana and the problems and costs it imposes on the public. There's no adequate funding to track this data. However, various well-respected organizations have tracked the statistics. Here's the cost of just one traffic issue. Traffic fatalities. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration Fatality Analysis Reporting System showed Colorado marijuana-related traffic deaths increased 92% from 2010 to 2014. What does that cost? According to the same report, one vehicle fatality costs $1.4 million. What about driving under the influence of drugs? In 2013-14, Denver DUIDs increased 100%, Aurora 66%. Now, the cost associated with the first DUI is estimated at $10,270. That's not revenue, that's the cost to a city or the county. The DUID costs are very similar. Are we prepared to pay for the extra law enforcement for all that? When marijuana is more available and accessible, more accepted because it's sold like beer and advertised more, you're going to get more users. And with more users comes higher costs. And when the marijuana you're purchasing has the highest documented THC in the world, and psychiatrists and other substance abuse specialists don't yet know the ramifications of that, ranging from addiction to psychosis and a host of public health problems in between, there's huge potential cost problems. Now, according to the latest SAMHSA report of 2013-14, and SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Colorado youth usage rates are #1 in the country. This is the latest available data from the most respected source. Public health concerns dictate that we pay attention to those who are minors and who do not yet have a voice. In 2014, a now very well-publicized case of a Broomfield 16-year-old was, according to his friends, too high to drive, but the teen drove anyway, and he killed a teenage boy in front of Broomfield High School. There's many, many more statistics I could cite, including upticks in homeless, the enormous issues of regulations that cost billions to do right, and that includes figuring out that smell issue. Social costs have been identified, and we have to look at the dollar costs associated with them. Here's a short list. Cleanup, from increase in homeless to increase in public trash. 2, offices for that regulations, manning them up as well as physically putting them there. 3, this is the biggie, the increase in law enforcement and their training. Who's going to pay for that? We can't even pay for our own fire department. What's the plan for schools? Expulsion rates are rising. What are we doing with kids affected by this because they're using and they're loitering and they commit crimes? How much is that going to cost us? We have to get real about how much marijuana will cost us, not just the tax that it will bring in. Marijuana shops in Englewood passed by a very thin margin, less than 1% of the vote. I urge all of you members to study the data and all of the respected reports. I can give you a list. You need the facts so you have the true picture of what potentially enormous costs associated with commercial marijuana throughout the state, costs that you need to consider before deciding on whether recreational marijuana is good for Englewood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. Any questions for her from council? Councilmember Barentine?
Are you able to, along with some of the sites that you suggested, are you able to give us a copy of your presentation?
Absolutely, and I can give you a list of citations as well. I would have to send that to you. I don't have it on the site on the.
I think you can send it to the city manager's office so that we can all get that. I would appreciate it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a lot of information very quick.
Yes, it is. There's a lot more, too.
Okay. As fast as you were talking, I believe there's probably a lot more.
Yes, there's a lot more.
Thank you.
The idea is that the costs are considerable. And they have, the problem is they haven't been calculated, but we can look at various statistics. And that's what I can get you.
Thank you. Councilmember Olson?
Thank you.
More questions for you, ma'am. Councilmember Olson.
Yes.
My last one, maybe.
I think so. Nobody else has chimed in.
Speaking of chiming.
Yeah.
I appreciate some of the comments that you made. One question, I have two actually. One would be for a city like ours that's sandwiched as a first-tier city that does have to deal with the unintended consequences. Well, everyone knew what some consequences would be. You'd be stupid if you didn't know that, of course, there would be an increase in driving while under the influence.
Absolutely.
But how do you suggest a city like ours pays for those kinds of things if we don't have some avenue for generating?
I've thought about that. I think that that requires a much deeper understanding of how the state tax is shared. I think that this is something that the city needs to go to the state to say, if we're dealing with X number of DUIDs, X number of fatalities, X number of homeless coming in, and we have chosen not to take part in that particular windfall of tax dollars, how can you reimburse us as a city? How can you reimburse us as a county? But here's the issue, Councilman Olson, and I've thought a lot about this. I was like, well, do two wrongs make a right? Do we say, okay, we need to bring in recreational marijuana so that we can pay for the problems from Denver and we can pay for the problems from somewhere else, in addition to paying for the potential problems that this could bring to our city? I don't know if that's the right answer.
Well, because we're in such a, well, I'm not going to go on with
Yeah, and we
Anyway,
are.
You've
We're
answered,
sandwiched.
you don't have none of us has a silver
No.
bullet for that, which is, I think, what the crux of this is. The other questions, are you a medical doctor or?
No, I'm a PhD in English.
Okay,
So
great.
that means I know how to do lots of research.
Send it our way.
I will do that.
Further questions for her? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Moving on to our next speaker, which is Elaine Hults, Englewood resident, will be present to address council regarding marijuana. Good evening, Elaine.
I have to give my address again. 53 South Lincoln Street, Englewood, Colorado. It's also interesting to note, saying something in adjacent to what you just said, that although people will not have the freedom of choice to smoke cigarettes, marijuana will be the habit of choice and the brain-numbing drugs. All of this, along with the failing education, will provide increased crime and deaths, setting the stage for the New World Order government, like lambs led to slaughter. But I really want to talk to you about the comprehensive plan. And this plan has created quite a bit of controversy. However, I have the answer. Level the city and start again. Obama has given HUD the power to level the playing field by the Community Block Grant called CDBG. It's a grant fund. With it comes very expensive shirt tails. Because the purpose of this is to requiring neighborhoods to integrate financially and ethically, which means the lower income households will be moving into all neighborhoods without exception. HUD will be determining all zoning and use of vacant land, as well as current occupied land within cities. This is going on all over the country. We will no longer need to have a building and zoning department. Urban renewal will be able to blight residential areas, doesn't matter what the zoning level is, for future multi-housing only. And you, the owner of private homes, will be paying for your demise. You can go under the HUD, because last year in 2015, HUD agreed to take on this task, and I'm not sure if Englewood Housing has gone for this grant. From what I understand, they come before you for grants. They came before you for one last year, and I didn't catch what it was. If they come before you for this grant, even if you say no, it's going to happen. You're going to be forced to it, one way or the other. I won't be here, thank God. I'm getting close to 90, and I don't plan to be around too much longer. But the thing I feel bad about is bringing children into this world who brought grandchildren into this world, who brought great-grandchildren into this world. Those are the generations. You will feel it, but it's the children that come after you that are going to feel it even more. I feel sorry for Joe. I feel sorry for your boys, Steve, because they're going to be faced with this. And if you think there's a way out, it doesn't happen that way. You're going to suffer. We're going to see riots. You're going to see, this is why they want to take guns away from you. If the children were taught the history, they'd know the danger of that. Because that's what they did to the Jews. And the Jews had no defense. So think very carefully before you sign on any dotted line committing the people of this community. It will come eventually, but at least in your tenure, you can hold it back for a while and not hold that against, and people won't hold it against you. But it is a one-world government, people. So wake up. We're not playing games here. Our city is at stake for as long as we can keep it. So anybody have any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for her? Councilmember Russell.
Elaine, could you give us the websites where you got?
I put one down here because it was interesting. It's lowercase a, ffh.net. There's also an organization that's, if you go in there, you're going to see different organizations. Read them all. There is one that's trying to combat this. Even people on the radio are trying to combat it, and they're putting this on the web. But if you go into HUD, under .gov, federal government, and look at their statutes, when it comes to multiple housing, you will see what it's geared for. This is what you have in that plan that they've given you, right down to health care, what you eat, where you're going to work, where you're going to live. We're going into a police society, people, so wake up.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to agenda item 7, recognition of unscheduled public comment. We do have several speakers this evening. First speaker is Anthony Plute, I believe it is. Evening, Mr. Plute. I believe your topic is recreational marijuana as well?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Talk about that. I know Rick, Steve. I remember you, Jeff, when you was on the board.
Yes, sir.
Good to see us all. Anyway, my name is Anthony Vincent Plute. This gentleman right here, talking the old days, my one grandfather come from Italy in 1870 and the other one in 1872 in Denver. So we're 5 generations plus. Anyway, beside that, I reside at 3380 West Monmouth Avenue, right behind Centennial Lutheran Church. And we've been there for 48 years. We raised our family. And being taxpayers to the school district, it's been Littleton the whole time. Englewood didn't get it. We're still paying for it. Anyway, I was in the military. Giving you a little background about myself. I was in the Army. I was drafted in 1962 and spent 6 years. I was Army infantry. I was cadre, basic training. And I spent 33 and a half years with Caterpillar tractor here in Denver and retired 18 years ago. Lucky me, huh? 18 years. Anyway, I was talking about a quote. This Kurt Erickson, that was said in the newspaper, he quoted saying that, if the sky hasn't fallen on any of us yet on this marijuana issue. And I thought, well, right, I never heard the sky falling on anybody, but I think he should say the rain falls on everybody. But if that's the case, which I do believe is true, I'd use an umbrella, just because his quote. Meanwhile, the deeds of the former city fathers, I like to bring up I think his name was Charles Allen, the water department. The man had foresight. He went years ago and he got water rights. Oh, did it pay off for Englewood? Highland Ranch started with Englewood water. Thornton run out of water, and they had to get money or water from Englewood. Englewood made revenue. This is what we want, revenue in a good way. Englewood is great when it comes to golf courses, parks. Just in general, the Father has made this a pretty good place. And now the ball is in our corner. Now, where I'm coming from on another thing here, I got a little innuendo to tell you a little
Mr.
story.
Plute, are you aware you only have 3 minutes? I just want to make sure you're aware. You only have 3 minutes to speak.
I wanted to get this point out.
Yeah, please. I'll give you a few more seconds. I just want to make sure you're aware.
I can't get it done in 2 minutes or a minute.
No problem. Would you like to reschedule for next session?
If it'll only take a minute.
Yeah, I'm willing to extend you another minute here if you'd like to finish up your
I wasn't
thoughts.
paying attention. But there was one quick point I wanted to make on
Please.
this. But anyway, the Indians of the past, I'll say it correct, politically correct, but anyway, they had a medicine doctor. And this medicine doctor, he was the one that controlled the headaches, rheumatism, arthritis, not arthritis, but their innuendos. So what happened to him? They all went to him when they had medical problems. Good point. But they went to him when they wanted to have the pipe to smoke. And what do you think they were smoking? Now, how do you think they got those Indians running around in a circle all night long and invade the fort and everybody else with bullets shooting at them? They were on a buzz. They were on a good kick. Now, what do you think they were smoking? Tobacco or sagebrush? Anyway, that's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Would you mind sticking around for just a second in case council members have any questions for you? Any questions for Mr. Plute? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank God.
Next speaker is Anna Plute, also speaking about recreational marijuana. Good evening, Mrs. Plute.
We have been residents and taxpayers of the city of Englewood, and we live at 3380 West Monmouth Avenue for over 48 years, as my husband explained. We are opposed to the granting of recreational marijuana to the city of Englewood for the following reasons. Number one, recreational marijuana poses a great danger to the health and welfare of the children in our community. If it is in our community, it is more accessible to our children. It is putting children at risk in our community. Number two, recreational marijuana poses a threat of crime in our community. People who need a fix are more likely to steal and commit crimes in our neighborhood, like car thefts. There is also the likely possibility that recreational marijuana may fuel violence and drug trafficking. Number three, recreational marijuana poses a great danger to driving under the influence and endangers lives of the citizens of Englewood. Marijuana-impaired drivers have made up of about 12.5% of all citations for driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Number four, recreational marijuana stores diminish homeowners' property values. No one believes that it would be a good idea to own a home near a recreational marijuana store. Would you want your home to be right next to the marijuana store? One of our neighbors, that's what's going to happen to her. In fact, some people are choosing nearby communities as an alternative, and they won't want to live in Englewood if we have recreational marijuana. Choosing homes represents an investment in the future. Recreational marijuana stores in our community challenge both of these investments. Let's keep our children safe and keep our home values high. Therefore, we are opposed to the granting of recreational marijuana in Englewood. About January of last year, we had a large group of our neighbors here, and we got up and gave our little talk how we did not want to have medical marijuana, so we weren't very well received by the marijuana board, and we lost. And so therefore, why would we want to have recreational marijuana if we didn't want the medical? We do not want recreational marijuana. We don't even want it considered. I mean, I could say it 10,000 times until my time's up, but I won't. We do not want recreational marijuana in Englewood. We do not want our property values diminished. We do not want any undesirable individuals or any type of crime this type of business can bring to our area. As longtime residents and taxpayers of the city, would you please represent us, our desires, and please deny the recreational marijuana in the city of Englewood? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blute. Any questions for her from council? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Moving on to our next speaker is Peggy Lapp. Also speaking about recreational marijuana. Good evening, Ms. Lapp.
Council, Peggy Lapp, 5034 South Grove Street. I'm sure you recognize me. I'm back again. As I've been watching the renovation of the building near our house at 5005 South Federal, which is soon to be a medical marijuana shop, I can't help but feel let down again. In my backyard this last week, I'm listening to the hammering and the noise and just thinking how I really wish I could move, but I can't. Because once everyone knows there's a medical marijuana building around the corner, I'm sure I'm not going to get my money's worth out of my house. Major changes are going to happen once the shop opens up. And judging by the sales overall in Colorado, a lot of people are going to want to come and buy retail pot around the corner from my house. I already have a lot of traffic down my street. My kid plays in the street with her friends, the neighbor kids. They ride their bikes. I've already had to call the police several times for people speeding. I'm only concerned about what the added traffic is going to do for my neighborhood. I'm concerned also that once Englewood goes down this path without any direction, and we allow the sellers and businesses to have the upper hand, we will change our city and not for the better. We must ask just what we want Englewood to be. For our residents, and quiet living, or for the tax revenue. And for the people who are building a business, sure, they're entitled. This is America. I'm as patriotic as the next person. But this kind of business is not something that we've seen before. We can have all kinds of Chinese restaurants. We can have liquor stores. We can have all those things because we've seen how those impact our neighborhoods. This, we don't. We don't even have a clue. People who live here in Englewood should be considered first and foremost before anybody comes in with a business license and wants to just make money, because that's what they're here for. The gentleman who's renovating the building around the corner from my house doesn't live here. Any of you want to change houses with me? I'd love to, because I'm tired of thinking of what might happen. Yes, I don't know what might happen. It may be all benign, like Randy said before. Oh, you won't have any problems. Maybe I won't. I wanted the choice to make that on my own. The people in District 4, where I live, chose not to allow this. We voted against it. We were part of the majority of voting against it completely. Our district is right where this is at, in those overlapping circles that somehow landed this in our backyard. I feel like I've been betrayed by my city council. And I know some of you weren't here before, but you're here now, and you have the opportunity to change it for us in the future. Say no to retail, say no to recreational. Do what you can to get rid of medical for us. I think that the city will agree. And if we have to take it to vote this fall, I'm going to have to battle it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for Mrs. Lapp? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Moving on to our next speaker. Sorry, it's a little illegible. Consuelo Rodriguez, is that what it is? Consuela, thank you. Sorry, the pen was giving out a little bit, Consuelo.
It's okay. It's a hard name. I get it. So my name is Consuelo Rodriguez. Unfortunately, I live at 5014 South Grove Street. That's directly behind the new medical marijuana shop that's going up. I say unfortunately because if you think that our home values are not going to drop and we're going to be able to sell them on the drop of a dime, good luck. I put my home for sale as soon as it passed for medical marijuana. And when I say medical marijuana, how many people really need medical marijuana that are getting it? Probably not a lot. So I put my house up for sale. I got an offer, and somebody let the person that was making the offer know that it was going to be a medical marijuana shop. She withdrew her offer in a heartbeat. That's how fast our houses are going to sell. This is how much our homes are valued with these shops going up. I only wish that you guys could go and see how close this place is to me. How close do I have to live with this? How close is it to my children? My kids will not be able to enjoy the backyard until the shop is gone. Would you want your kids to have to deal with this? Probably not. I just wish you guys could go and see how it affects us that have to live with it. The shop owner talked about security and it's going to be secure, and well, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like a prison. My backyard is going to be a prison for my kids because God knows what's going to fly over accidentally. An accidental edible, an accidental cigarette butt. My dog can eat it. Who's going to pay for that? All these things I have to pay for. Please, please, when you're taking into consideration retail, take us into consideration. It's not going to work for us. Not today, not tomorrow, not for the money, not for nothing. I'm just asking you to please have heart and take consideration into what's really going into this as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for Mrs. Rodriguez, sir? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am. Moving on to our next speaker, Cohn Dickerson, excuse me.
I've been living in Englewood for about 20 years now. My name is Cohn Dickerson. I'm at 2835 South Pennsylvania. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about the comp plan and hopefully segueing into the marijuana issue because I do believe that the comp plan needs to address the kind of businesses we want in the city. In my previous incarnation as a planning, zoning, and permitting consultant, I've needed to examine around 200 comp plans, especially when the city and county planners turn to their comp plans because their zoning plans would allow my applications, but their comp plans they thought wouldn't. So there was always a disconnect there. All of those plans have been inadequate, contradictory, and unclear. But this one that was proposed that I've read is one of the worst I've ever encountered. It is way too long for one, contradictory in every respect, inaccurate, incomplete, and in my experience, worthless. The only suggestion that might be worth keeping is the offhand note that planning and permitting regulations need to be relaxed. They also need to be deleted in the main. The survey of goals and objectives are likewise too long, unclear, duplicative, and contradictory. It could be distilled into 2 pages of actual clear goals clearly stated. The language is way too broad and subject to such interpretation as to allow planning, zoning, and permitting to do whatever they want, running roughshod over citizens' property rights and favoring development to the developers to the detriment of the city as a whole. The proposed plan needs to be scrapped and completely redone or the existing plan revised. I do not want the city tied to such nonsense and expensive rezoning based on inaccurate and contradictory information. I had some specific proposals, and it looks like I might be able to get to them, but mainly the marijuana issue is the one I want to talk about in light of the comp plan. If Englewood is going to continue allowing marijuana stores and now recreational marijuana, there needs to be a process that takes into consideration the will of the citizens who live within the districts and sites where it's going to be allowed. Each district's population should get to decide if they want to have such businesses in their backyard and under what circumstances. Conversion poses other considerations. They should have their current licensing and location permit void and have to start over with applications for recreational, which may be denied. A time limit to vacate and or move should not exceed 3 months from application for conversion. If the medical stores choose to remain medical, their licenses should be subject to review yearly for compliance with strict operational rules. Oh, I guess I'm finished.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for her? Councilmember Barentine?
Like I had asked the previous speaker, that was a lot of information, and I was very taken by your analysis. Do you have that available? Would you be able to make your presentation available? I would like to look at it.
Yeah, I can put
That's a fast 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you could do that, if that's possible, I would greatly
Well, I had
appreciate
some specific suggestions, and just briefly, one of them is the street size. It's 60 feet all the way around the city, so there's 15 feet of easement on either side, even in residential, where it's totally unnecessary. And what I was told by planning one time was, well, we have to have that because we might want to turn this entire city into a commercial zone.
That's why I want what you wrote down, because you can't properly vet it right here in this setting, and I would greatly appreciate it if you would provide it.
I can email it all to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to agenda, let's do some response to public comment. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Barentine.
I greatly appreciate Doug and Elaine, you guys coming out. You always keep us on track. Elaine, I like some of the websites. I'll be checking some of that information out, especially in light of our Englewood Housing Authority at their last meeting apparently making the claim that they wish to broaden their expanse of where they're going to handle areas outside of the city of Englewood. I don't know where that's coming from, and change their name. So we have yet to get a copy of that tape, so we'll find out more information about that and what role we're supposed to play in this, or whether they can even do that or not. So I greatly appreciate that. To Ms. Ross and Consuela, and I'm sorry, the couple there, I apologize, I didn't get your, I don't want to butcher your last name. Pardon?
Mr. and Mrs. Blute.
Okay. He just said that so quick. I greatly appreciate you guys coming out and expressing your thoughts on this issue. It's important. It hit your area a lot. You guys had at least the one and only hearing for a medical marijuana place. The other ones went on without anybody even having a voice. So at least on the public hearing side of it, for a regular process, as you would expect for that. So I greatly appreciate you guys coming out, and hope that we can have some more conversations about it. I hope you guys stick around.
Thank you. Further comments? Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you, everyone, for coming and sharing your thoughts tonight. Doug, I always appreciate your stories, and I will be visiting those trees. Elaine, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts as well. Everyone, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your concerns about the marijuana. It's really crucial that we hear from you, especially at this time while we're making such really big decisions. So I really appreciate your concerns, and I know it's really impacting your neighborhood a lot, and just really appreciate you sharing your concerns with us.
Thank you. Councilmember Russell.
Yes, I want to thank everyone for coming out. Doug, I always love the insight that you have, and I am going to ride over west of Federal to look at those two trees. I may have already seen them, but didn't have any idea about the history. Elaine, thank you also for the research you're doing and for coming to share. And Dr. Ross, I appreciate your input, and I'm looking forward to having that information also. And Mr. and Mrs. Plute and Consuela and Cohn, I just thank you all so much for coming. I agree with Councilmember Martinez and Councilmember Barentine that we do need to hear from you, and I appreciate that, and we will be taking that into consideration as we have discussions. So thank you so much for taking time to come out and share with us.
Thank you. Councilmember Yates.
like to thank everyone for coming this evening and speaking. For the folks who are discussing the marijuana issue, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the reason we're talking about it is there's a lobbying group that was hired by the medical marijuana shops in order to, let's say, get licensing for them to have retail marijuana. You guys have made some very compelling statements. My question would be, if they pursue and go to an election or a citizens-led initiative, will you folks be willing to go out and campaign? Thank you. This would be the entire city.
Thank you. Councilmember Olson.
Thank you, Steve, for mentioning that. I think one of the things that's difficult about this is that we do believe that there probably would be a citizen initiative this fall, and it will vote. Everyone will get a chance to vote again. And in the last go-around, no one went out to say anything to anybody about voting against the initiative when we were just getting a read of the population on what they thought, which is what we're going off of this right now. And if we all did this the way we were elected, I would vote no because my district voted no. Councilmember Gillett would say no, and I think the rest would probably be compelled to vote yes because the city went yes. But it was such a small margin that as a council at the time we decided to err on being conservative, and that's why we didn't put it in. I think now we're going to be pressured to really take a look at it. And do you want us to make the decision about how it goes down and how it's regulated, or do you want it to be on a citizen initiative that could be anything? And so that's where we need your input and insight. So I appreciate your continuing to think about it. It'd be good to keep getting more input from you as you find things. I think it's really unfortunate that we've had marijuana this long in the state and that we have no great research that's really taking into account the policing that's going on. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences. I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm also very pragmatic about it and believe we've got to figure out a way as a community to utilize resources to make sure our kids are educated well and that we create a society that is not addicted and also that is not dependent. So I don't think those are easy questions. The last thing I wanted to say is I may have misunderstood a comment about our native population and indigenous people or American Indians, and I'm sorry if I misunderstood you on that, but I really don't appreciate it when we make fun of a particular group and characterize them in that way, and so I may have misunderstood that, but I know that your intent was to suggest that perhaps there's something that went wrong in the medicine man's work, but I think that that's a population that we have in our city that we need to be celebrating their culture and who they are rather than characterizing them, so I don't want to attach that to them. Thank you for coming, though.
Yeah, thank you all for your comments. I'll be really brief. I know we've gotten a lot of response already. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the marijuana issue since so many have come and spoke a little bit about it. Again, I'm not pro-marijuana. I'm pro-voter intent. Our issue is that we've voted on this issue several times here in the city of Englewood, and it's passed every time. I'm open to the idea of having a more robust public policy debate this year and putting it back on the ballot here in November. So I'm open to that idea. I think for the lady living directly next door to it, I'm also open to the idea of restricting adjacent, it shouldn't be adjacent to residential uses. So I'd be open to some regulations like that. We've also discussed at our previous study session some idea of perhaps having some local say in the community. I know that structure sort of failed you last time in the hearing there, so I'm not sure that's the best idea, but there has been some discussion regarding that. So please stay tuned on how we move this forward. I was hoping for us to sort of legislate a solution, but hearing so many people come forward on both sides, perhaps this is a good year to have a more robust public policy debate about this issue community-wide. And that's all I'll say about that. But thank you again for participating and coming in this evening. We're moving on to agenda item 8, which is communications, proclamations, and appointments. Seeing nothing there, we'll move on to the consent agenda items. Agenda item 9, do I hear a motion on those?
I move to approve consent agenda items 9B, 1, 2, and 3, and 9C1.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Comments? We do have one from Councilmember Barentine.
On the Cherry Hills Village for Clarkson, when We were doing some campaigning, or it might have been when I was doing a citizen initiative myself back in the day. I know when they had these agreements, like with Sheridan, they actually did just half the street. Is that what we're doing? Is like half and half?
Eric, can you address that,
I actually went down streets and saw half of it paved, and they said that's the Sheridan or Englewood side. That's not what we're doing.
No, that's not what we're doing here. This would actually chip seal or cape seal the entire street on both Englewood's portion and Cherry Hill's portion.
So we're combining the effort together to do
Correct.
the entire street at one time like
Yes,
that? Okay.
yes, ma'am.
All right. I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I had.
Thank you. Further questions or comments regarding the consent agenda items? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes will be cast. The record shows 6 ayes.
Moving on to agenda item 10, no public hearing items this evening. Moves us on to ordinance resolutions and motions. We do have one under 11C1. Public Works staff recommends council approve a motion to award a construction contract for $288,600 with W.O. Danielson Construction Company for the Service Center Pre-Wash and Wash Facility Project. Our staff source is Facilities and Operations Manager Michael Hogan. Mr. Hogan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks again for taking the time out. Public Works is bringing forward the Service Center Pre-Wash and Wash Facility. This was budgeted in the 2016 capital projects, and it'll be funded from the Service Center Enterprise Fund. I wanted to talk a little bit about why we need this before we get into what the project is. This is not for small format vehicles. So it's not for police cars, it's not for pickup trucks. This is for large format vehicles. This is for our dump trucks and our street sweepers and those types of vehicles. So let me give you kind of a little scenario here. There's a water main break, and water main breaks are good for one thing, and that's creating mud, okay? So what do we do with all that mud? Because we can't put it back in the giant hole we dig in the street. So we put all that mud in dump trucks, we haul it to the service center, we dump it in the back 40 where it can dry out. But you guys have all gardened here, right? That mud sticks to everything. So there's now a layer of mud in that dump truck. So we take that dump truck back to the site, we fill it up again, we come back and we dump it again. Now there's so much mud stuck to the dump truck we can't use it anymore. So that's where this facility comes in. They can take the dump truck to this facility, they raise up the bucket 16, 17 feet high, and spray it out with a fire hose. That's what this facility is. It's to clean those large format pieces of equipment. There's no car wash in the area that will allow us to do this type of cleaning. What needs washed besides those dump trucks? Rotomills. That thing's 20 foot long. We can't put that anywhere else to wash it. Motor graders, large format mowers from mowing the mowing lawns, and street sweepers. We need this for our MS4 regulations. I won't bore you with what MS4 regulations are, except to say that we can't put anything down the stormwater that's not supposed to be there. So we can't put mud, we can't put grass clippings. We have to collect all that when we wash it off this equipment and dispose of it correctly. So what are we asking to build? The pre-wash area, we've already discussed that. This is basically a fire hose wash-off area. We wash everything off with a fire hose, goes into a specific area, we push it up to a push wall, we let it dry, and then we can dispose of the material. It's for high volume washing, dump trucks, rotomills, and large mowers. We're also asking to redo the standard wash area. This is our existing wand wash area that we already have. But it's outdated, it needs new plumbing, it needs a new sand oil interceptor, new plumbing, and it has to be covered to meet MS4 requirements. So what we'll wash there, we can use that to wash cars, mowers, pickups, and detail cleaning of the larger equipment. If you wash off a dump truck with a fire hose, mud gets everywhere. So you still need another smaller facility with this hand wash to where you can wash off the splatter mud that you got on the cab and the other parts of the facility. So basically, we need this facility to wash off the large format equipment that can't be washed at any other site, and we need it to meet the MS4 water quality requirements. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Hogan? I have one. Might our neighbors benefit from this as well for a small fee? Is that possible?
We're always open to discussing that with Cherry Hills and the folks that are around us.
Yeah, because certainly Cherry Hills doesn't have a facility like this. Do our other neighbors, Littleton and some of the others, have these type of detention facilities for their runoffs?
They do. Most cities have an area that they wash these vehicles off and contain the equipment.
Thank you, sir.
In mud.
Further questions for Mr. Hogan? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Further comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Votes be cast. The record shows 6 ayes.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to agenda item 12, that's under general discussion, council member choice. I'll begin on this side with Amy tonight.
Okay. Well, I was able to attend this really fun event this weekend. Some students were painting utility boxes. This is a project coordinated by the Museum of Outdoor Arts, the Culture Arts Commission, and working with the art teachers at both high schools and the students. And a couple of my fellow members came to visit as well, so thank you for that. The students had a great time. They were really excited. They get to have a public piece of art on display, so they're really excited, and I just want to thank everyone involved with that project. It was really fun to watch the students in action.
Yeah, congrats. Sounded like a real win-win-win. Thank you for that. Councilmember Yates?
All right, this past week was rather busy. Lots of boards and commission meetings, but on Tuesday, the foundry groundbreaking happened, so that's the beginning of the development over there at General Iron. I also attended the art, I don't know,
Painting in action?
I attended that on Saturday. That was really fun. I can see that type of activity being a big part of our community. It allows the artists, the average person artist, to be able to get involved and create some art. And so that's, I could go through all my meetings, but it's rather boring. Thanks.
Moving on to Councilmember Rolson.
I thank you to Steve for going to Parks and Rec Board last week. My daughter was graduating from college, so I missed my board and commission. I did want to make one comment about our study session, in that we had quite a conversation about the comp plan, and right before that was the Parks and Rec comprehensive planning presentation at the beginning. And so I want to make sure that if any of you who have difficulty with comprehensive plans, that we give feedback now for that, so that when they come through with their plans, that we've all agreed to the process that they're going through. I'm not suggesting that anybody does, but now is the time to speak up and say, hey, let's make sure it's done this way, not that way, or whatever we think needs to be remedied from the last go-around. So other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Barentine?
I just wanted to check with the city manager first, just to make sure that on the vacation of that protective covenant, that we make sure that 24 feet height thing stays with that, because that's what we were promised in this. That's what's on there.
In the original covenant itself?
It's on the document on what we're allowing it to vacate. So I just want to make sure the document stays in whole, because I realized before that there wasn't exactly that in the ordinance itself, but the document as a whole is what we passed, so certainly. I expect that that'll stay in there. I just wanted to make sure. I did want to thank Amy. I would never horn in your cultural arts thing, but she was kind enough and generous enough to give me a call and ask me to attend the arts, and I really enjoyed talking to those young people. It was amazing, the ideas that they came up with and what they were doing, so I greatly appreciate that opportunity. Thank you. Rita and I, with the Lions Club, a couple of weeks ago, attended the 9 News Health Fair. We were volunteers. The Lions Club asked us to participate, and I remembered that because I just got my health thing back, and you may be surprised I'm healthier than I look, maybe to the dismay of some people. I am probably going to be around for a while. And I wanted to, again, Colleen, I did not mean to forget about you. I was very impressed with your presentation and the time and effort that you put in that, and I meant it sincerely that I would like to see that presentation. I did not mean to leave you out in my comments. I want to thank the mayor, because while I may not always attend meetings, like we have cameras now, you guys can attend meetings and we won't even know you're watching us. That may be the most best thing to keep us on track. And like that,
welcome.
Like that, I want to tell the mayor, thank you very much. I spent time this afternoon listening to the tape of the mayor-manager agenda-setting meeting, and Rita Russell, Councilmember Russell, regularly attends, and it is a public meeting. It is noticed, and it is recorded, and I spend a lot of time listening to the recordings of these meetings, and it's important that that's out there to the public to know how we come to decisions. And like any other meeting, it can get off track. You can start to be subjective, start making comments, start making decisions based on what you think people think or not. And I have to admit that I am extremely proud of Mayor Jefferson, because every time my veins started to pop and go, you can't do that. Council has to decide that. You can't do process or procedures or make decisions in that meeting. And with a lot more tactfulness that I hope that I develop at some time, he brought that around, and I greatly appreciate it. It is the transparency that matters in the process to me, and I greatly appreciate the respect that you have for that and making sure that that meeting, in some fun jest, but it does come back around to where it's taken care of, and I wanted to say thank you very much for that. I haven't done one of these for a while, so I did have a few things. We had Rita Russell, Councilmember Russell, sorry, didn't mean to be disrespectful, and I had a town hall meeting on Thursday night. It was very well attended for the short notice that it was. We were told that people really would like to have more of these. The comp plan and the marijuana issue were both discussed. I know that the city manager has some intention with the staff to do some kind of focus group thing, but I really think it's very important that we continue the discussion and have people coming out and figuring out, what's all involved in this and what we're doing with both the comp plan and the marijuana, medical marijuana, the smoke shops, the retail issue. So I greatly appreciated everybody who attended that meeting. We had a little over 40 people, I think it was, and just really listened to the constituents, and I learned a lot, so it was well worth it for me. I held my first District 3 coffee on Friday morning. I noticed it the night before because it was the idea from the people at the meeting, and I had good attendance because people are watching Next Door Neighbor and listening, seeing the notices posted, and was also asked to continue that. So I'm going to do another one on May 27th, and you can visit the website for that information for any of those events, additional town halls and those coffees, but was really encouraged to keep them going. Some of the issues that came out of that were aside from the marijuana and the comp plan, were some police issues. And I was glad that at the town hall meeting that our city manager was there. He was able to help with some of that. But a theme of some people being asked to, by our police department, to go ahead and take pictures, take down license plate numbers, take information, and being uncomfortable. And there were at least 4 different situations where we were having citizens being asked to kind of do things that made them feel uncomfortable, that they really shouldn't be having the police department advise. And there might be some miscommunication there, but that's why those town hall meetings are important, to kind of have that. Also, the kind of people getting the impression that we're not handling situations and that we're handing them over to other people. Why community development is calling somebody about a police issue or a code enforcement issue confuses people. So we need to get some process down and figure out why, figure out whether it's miscommunication on their part or on the part of the city. Then there were some construction issues, 2, one with the Santa Fe and Oxford corridor. There's been several accidents there, some with pedestrians, a couple with bikes. People are not very happy, and there's no people there. So we really do need to try and focus on making some kind of effort on what we're going to do with that intersection before somebody gets killed, including the South Suburban trails. And maybe that's part of the thing that we could do with the Tri-Cities meeting, is maybe have a representative from South Suburban attend that meeting. There were some construction weird things put up that caught some people's bikes, and they had an accident as a result of that. I don't know whether it was tacked down or not. I don't know if it's the project we're doing in conjunction with the construction that's going on over there with Sheridan or not, but we do need to take a look at how they're doing those construction sites and making sure that they're safe for what we've put it out there for, with pedestrian and bicycles. And somebody showed me a service warranty letter just got sent out, and it's got the mayor's endorsement on it. And the mayor is no longer Mr. Penn, but that letter just got written, just got sent. It has the endorsement of the city still, after we have taken this council back, I believe, in December, took their support of that away, and for them to continue to send out any letters that say that the city is endorsing it with Mayor Penn's signature on it is probably not an appropriate thing. So we need, first they asked me if maybe the mayor changed over, and I said, no, it's still Joe Jefferson. But that's not who, so they're obviously using an old letter, and I don't think it's an appropriate thing for a business with their purported professionalism to go ahead and do things like that when we've already taken away our endorsement. And then I also wanted to go ahead and get from council at some point, we had the Freedom of Information Coalition come and present on Monday, and my one objective has been that the city do things within the law, that we follow the law, that we take our oath seriously, and that we follow the law and do processes and procedures that are as transparent as possible. I think that a lot of information was shared on that, and I really would like to have feedback from council on whether they thought that it provided the guidance that they needed so that we can go ahead and maybe tweak some things and correct some things that weren't being done correctly before and move forward, meeting my goal and objective. So that's all I had. And then I'll go a couple of weeks and not say anything. So. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Russell.
I just really appreciated everyone who came out tonight. I know a lot of you came to the town hall meeting last Thursday night, but there were quite a few here that did not. And I do believe that we are a citizen-represented government, and I greatly appreciate that. And so I will continue to be doing town hall meetings. And also coffee. So I'm very thankful for all of you that are giving us input. That is very helpful. My husband and I actually attended the Lions Club 90th anniversary on Saturday night. It was a very nice event. And so the Lions Club has been very actively involved in the city over the years and provided a lot of help to the city. So it was a great time. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Moving on to mayor choice, I did want to echo Councilmember Yates' comments about the Foundry groundbreaking. I was able to attend, and this really is a great thing for the city in that we had a brownfield, a place that's been inactive for a very long time, and that will be the new home of future families and future workforce housing, some affordable housing for folks. We're all aware of how crazy rents are going in our community and displacing so many people from our community. It's nice to be able to have some new places. In addition, it'll also kick off the redevelopment, hopefully, of the entire rest of the remaining site over at General Iron Works, again, which was a brownfield and has not been doing a lot for the community, but will be the future of a brand new community inside of Englewood that will be home to families and all different folks who are productive members of our community moving forward. So I'm really happy to see that, and that was a PUD, and that is something I think we need to think about when we're thinking about land use planning, that this is something that is positive for the community. I think some other examples we can debate, but I think this one really is a win-win. Also wanted to comment or give a kudos, I guess, to Eric Keck as well as the rest of the city staff for getting us up to the 21st century tonight and getting us on our first video streaming live to our community. I'm really so proud to be part of a council that values transparency at a cost-effective dollar price. So thank you again for that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Being made.
And under Mayor's choice, I would like to call for a special meeting for the purpose of entering into an exec session with strategic government resources to discuss candidates for the city attorney position on Tuesday, May 24th at 6 p.m. So this is an announcement of a special meeting that will turn into a exec session there on Tuesday, May 24th. Moving on to city manager's report.
Are we taking a vote on it?
No, we're not.
Oh, okay.
I'm just announcing for notice posting concerns. Mr. Keck?
I don't have anything this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. City attorney's report.
Back in February, this council appointed a hearing officer on an appeal from one of our officers. She has since amended that appeal on May 13th, so I was looking for a consensus from council that you would want this hearing officer to also hear the amended appeal. So you can do that by motion.
That would make a lot of sense. I would entertain a motion on that now.
I'll second.
I'll go ahead and make that motion then and allow for that appointed hearing officer to now hear the amended. And I got a second from Councilmember Barentine. And are there further comments before we vote on this? Seeing none, please vote.
All votes be cast. The record show 6 ayes.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Comer?
No.
Thank you. And that is all for this evening.